Endurance sports are changing rapidly. There are more races in more locations than ever before. More and more beginners are dipping their toes into swimming, biking, running, OCR, and triathlon. And in 2025, it's going to look completely different than it did even a few years ago. And that means there's not only a ton of opportunity to compete, but to do well. Because if you can focus on making a few simple changes, you're going to stand out from the crowd. I know this because I spend so much time on researching the cutting edge of athletic training, strength and conditioning, and peak performance. In the last year alone, I've read over 50 books and 100 articles on the topic of endurance sport performance. I've not only implemented that research into my own training, but my clients as well, and the results speak for themselves. So in this video, I'm going to walk through the top 5 strategies you can use in 2025 to train like a pro endurance athlete, even if you're just starting out. If you want to thrive in your sport in 2025, this is where you have to focus. The first strategy, and the biggest one, is that you have to follow a plan. I know you've heard it before, but this really is step 1 to training like a pro endurance athlete. Up to this point in your sport, you probably got away with winging it, but if you really want to improve, you have to switch your mindset from endurance workouts to endurance training. What's the difference? Workouts without a plan is just exercise. It's fine if you're just going to improve your fitness, but if you want to compete, you need a training plan that at a minimum trends towards increased training load, meaning you progress to more volume over time. Transitions from general to specific, meaning it starts to resemble your competition as the competition approaches, and balances recovery with intensity. Professional athletes don't just have recovery days, sometimes they have recovery weeks or even recovery months. And these recovery periods are strategically implemented to allow for training adaptations to occur. The second strategy to train like a pro endurance athlete is incorporating a lot of low intensity work. You've probably heard your favorite influencer say something like, "You have to run slower to run faster." This is only part of the puzzle. What this is referring to is called polarized training, or sometimes 80-20 training. This means around 80% of your training is done at low intensity and 20% is at moderate to very high intensity. And the most common way to measure this is using heart rate zones. A lot of pros use this style of training, and here's why. Lower intensity training has a lower risk of injury, and elite athletes do not want to get injured. Lower intensity training also allows you to build an aerobic base and work on your form improvement. That's why a lot of pros will spend their entire off-season using low-intensity training for up to 90% of their training sessions. The idea here is to increase your body's efficiency, meaning you can run, bike, or swim faster at a lower heart rate. Most beginners are probably training at a higher heart rate than they realize and need to spend time in that lower heart rate zone. In the same vein, beginners also tend to undertrain at the other end of the spectrum. At least some part of the 20% of training needs to be performed at maximal or near maximal effort. This is where athletic adaptations occur as well. And I get it, athletic training is hard. It hurts. So implementing more sprints and threshold runs is a must, but it's not something that every amateur is doing, but should be. The third strategy you can implement to train like a pro is following a strength training program tailored to your sport. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen beginners jump into an endurance sport while continuing to train like a bodybuilder, including me. It was one of the first mistakes I made, but weightlifting twice a week is not the same as training for athletic performance. Pros follow a strength and conditioning program that complements their endurance work. Write that down if you have to. Your strength work should complement your endurance work. A well-designed strength and conditioning program will include aspects of injury prevention, foundational strength, power, and sport-specific movements, among other things. Either invest in your own research or hire a strength and conditioning coach who can help you with this type of programming. This is one of the easiest ways to get ahead in your sport. The fourth strategy is to measure performance. Beginners really struggle with this for 2 reasons. 1, they don't know what to measure. And 2, measuring performance can be time-consuming and difficult to do by yourself. But if you can, it is worth doing. And here's the simplest, most straightforward example of taking a performance measurement and how it can affect your training program. If your goal is to run your first 5K, then at the start of your training program, you will run or run-walk a 5K and see how long it takes. Every 3 to 4 weeks, you'll run another 5K and track your time. Everything you do, every run, every workout and recovery period will be designed to reduce your time of your 5K time trials. The good news is there's a ton of ways to work on pacing improvements based off that initial 5K time trial. The Jack Daniels VDOT formula, for example, is very popular with endurance runners. But the point is, if you never measure your performance in the beginning, you won't know if you're making progress. You'll have no idea if the training you're doing is actually working. So keep in mind, performance indicators you track will vary depending on your sport and fitness level. So it's probably going to require a little bit of research on your end to find what the best performance indicators to track will be for you in your sport. Okay guys, the fifth and final strategy for training like a pro endurance athlete is to focus on one goal at a time. Pros hyper-focus on their sport. They live and breathe it. They follow the sport religiously. They watch competition. They attend events that they're not even competing in. They study it. Beginners and amateurs are plagued with shiny object syndrome. I am just as guilty as everyone else of this. I see some new race or fitness challenge and I'm dying to try it. But that's also why I'm not a pro endurance athlete and why I haven't made a ton of dramatic improvements in any one area. It's something I'm working on and you probably should be too if you want to get better at your sport. There's absolutely nothing wrong with trying new things. If you want to train like a pro, then you need to have focus. Professional athletes also don't compete in a ton of endurance events. Most are striving to peak for a handful of events throughout a season. They have an intense singularity of focus. Integrating a little more singular focus into your training plan is an effective way to boost performance. Follow the pros of your sport, watch the competitions, and really immerse yourself in the sport that you want to improve in. Alright guys, I expect you're going to see a lot more beginners and amateurs taking their training seriously in 2025. The competition's getting stiffer, so let's review how you can up your training game. Number 1, follow a training plan that's specific to your goals. This is a must. If you only do one thing, do this one. Number 2, incorporate more low intensity and very high intensity work. Most amateurs spend too much time in the middle and not enough time at the lower and higher ends of the intensity spectrum. Number 3, follow a strength training program that is tailor-made to improve your athletic performance. Number 4, measure your performance. You'll never know if your plan is working if you don't track your progress. And number 5, immerse yourself in your sport and focus on one goal at a time. Endurance sports are exploding. There's a lot of opportunity here for beginners and amateurs to find success. There are a million things the pros are doing that you could be too. These are just a few of my favorite and simplest to implement. If you want to learn more, I recommend reading Matt Fitzgerald and Ben Rosario's book, Run Like a Pro, Even If You're Slow. It's got a ton of useful strategies, especially for runners. And if you're looking to learn more about strength and conditioning for endurance sports, or just so you can live a more adventurous life, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment for a topic you'd like me to cover next. If you want to take your training to the next level, but you aren't sure where to start, take a look at the coaching link in the video description. I'm an experienced strength and conditioning specialist with a background in endurance sports, and I'd love to help you with your athletic goals. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.